You're listening to the Weather Junkies.
Oh boy. Large wedge tornado coming up into Tuscaloosa.
A winter storm warning is in effect for our area.
So we can expect at least another 2 to 4 inches for the night. Then that snow.
The National Weather Service in Huntsville has issued a tornado warning for northwestern Massachusetts.
14 to 22 inches of snow!
Good Thursday evening. Thank you for joining us here on the Weather Junkies. I'm Tyler Jankowski. Joining in from the Champlain Valley, we have Dakota Smith live with us in Colorado. Dakota?
Hey, Tyler, and hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Great weather in Colorado the past few days. It was pretty muggy early in the week and over the weekend. And for Colorado, muggy is, well, I guess anywhere muggy's in the 60s dew points. But it was mainly in the 50s, which is still muggy for Colorado. And it's been warm and sunny the past few days. Not much precipitation or shower activity in the area. So that's been nice. So not much to complain about. Fire weather is not that bad right now. There are a few small fires south of here. I actually haven't been paying attention too much. But I know there is some fire activity, I think in southern Colorado. But otherwise, it's been good. Tyler, how about you?
It's been beautiful the last 2 days, but early in the week we had our first bout of humidity, and we actually had the crown, I think, for highest temperature on the first day of what was a heat wave for many, not quite up here, but we hit 95. I can't even remember what the first day of that was, but we hit 95 in Burlington when most other spots were in the lower 90s. Just, that's an interesting crown to have, being that we're so far north. But yeah, we had that on the first day, and then the humidity started to go up, and I felt it where I am because I don't have AC. Yeah. It was only 2 days, so I think that's my limit. And then if it goes longer, it's not going to work. We have humidity returning this weekend, and I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's weird. Our weather's been kind of in sync recently. Must be the pattern. I don't know. Noah. So we're joined tonight by Noah Brauer, a good friend of mine and friend of the show. Noah's out in Colorado as well, and Noah, you've had this pretty much the same weather as I had. Do you want to add anything to what I said there?
Yeah, it's just been pretty, like you mentioned last week, Dakota. It was pretty just muggy last week for Colorado standards, and now we've just really dried out, and as a result, we've also heated up. So yeah, I might even be talking upper 90s here in Denver by early next week. So I guess summer's making a rude arrival.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least it's not snowing anymore. That's an improvement.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think, because this was 2 days ago. I was walking out of work, and I think our latest snowfall on record in Denver was June 13th. And I was just walking outside of my office, and it was in the mid 80s. So I'm just thinking, how could it possibly snow
right?
At this time?
Yeah.
1 year.
That's crazy. I think
Denver weather is amazing.
Yeah. There are a bunch of crazy stats about Colorado snow and late and how early it can be. Yeah. But tonight we're joined by Noah to talk about storm chasing. Noah and I and a bunch of other people went out chasing on Monday in northern Colorado Plains and Wyoming, southern Wyoming and Nebraska. And it was quite the event. So we figured we'd talk about it here and kind of share our story. But before that, let's get into a few tweets here in trending in the Weatherverse. Tyler, you want to start us out?
Yeah, I'll start us out this week. The first tweet is from Steve Copertino on Twitter. You can follow him at the handle of, by the way, Twitter with an update today. A handle is the Steve Cop. And he tweeted roughly 54,200 lightning strikes, cloud to ground, cloud to cloud, and intra-cloud over the past hour or so with the Hayes, Kansas supercell complex. And he left a mesmerizing image of a satellite with the lightning strikes overlaid on top of it. 54,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of lightning.
And that's in only 1 hour with one
Yeah.
supercell. Now, cloud to cloud, that's intra-cloud, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so this actually was from today. It was a cell that just blew up in central Kansas, and now it's a big old complex, mesoscale complex out there. And I don't think it put down a confirmed tornado or anything, but it has had some hail and some gusty winds with it. And yeah, it's I mean the satellite image from GOES 16 as always is amazing. And the lightning data we have now is just incredible. Tyler, do you use any of that on air? I'm just curious.
Well, we use, I believe it's still Visala. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I think it's cloud to ground, but I know that it seems to me that the preeminent lightning network is becoming Earth networks for cloud to ground and intra-cloud. It's funny you bring up lightning because I'm working on lightning for the upcoming Little League regionals. So it's something that is obviously very important for event forecasting and awareness and hazard forecasting. And I went to the Weather Service a week ago, or maybe it's 2 weeks now, but I went through a simulation that they had, and it's insane how much lightning occurs in the cloud before it hits the ground.
Yeah.
So if you're using lightning data, you just have to be aware of what you're looking at, because it's not always apparent. And I know radar scope in particular is only cloud to ground. It's part of the Earth network's network, which is a very good network, but it is only the cloud to ground component. So you just got to be careful, because there could be a lot of lightning ongoing, even if it's not showing up. It's just not hitting the ground yet.
Huh. I did not know that about radar scope. That's interesting.
Yeah. And they say that in responses on Twitter to users that are asking about it. I mean, it's a tremendous product, and I would assume that adding in the intra-cloud stuff would be quite expensive.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the limitation. I would be willing to consider a little bit more, but I probably wouldn't pay for the tier 2 for all of the lightning, because that's too much. But as it is now, it's cheap to pay $10 a year for the lightning data they give you. It's very good.
Yeah, I just renewed actually. I didn't do it.
Remember when you didn't want radar scope, and it took I had to coax you off a cliff.
It did take me a while, and I was kind of silly to not get it sooner. But you were the one that told me to get it. But I got pro right when it came out, though. I was so far into radar scope, and the lightning part is my favorite part, because I'm terrified of lightning, and when I'm hiking, I don't want to be in a sticky situation.
Well, a lot of data, or at least through, I believe it's Allison House, they offer gridded lightning, and I know that they offer more. They offer the total package, but it's gridded to save money, so you don't get the individual strikes.
Yeah,
I like the individual strikes. It's really cool.
Me too. I can't believe we can see it, honestly. Go ahead now.
I was going to say, so there's this new it's MRMS packages, and my software company is actually starting to decode them and include them in our software, and they include parameters. It comes in grid format, so it's just like any other model format, but there's vertically integrated ICE, and it's a pretty good it's a good way to predict where lightning's going to strike in real time. It's a good nowcasting tool, so kind of awesome. a new parameter.
Now, are you familiar with the new lightning sensor on the GOES 16 satellite?
I am not. I actually don't know much about it at all. Do you guys know anything about it?
From what I understand, there is a lightning sensor on it, and it's meant to detect in-cloud lightning only, which makes sense, I suppose, if you think about it. If the satellite's above a storm, it might have trouble seeing what's going on underneath. But I guess it can sense in-cloud lightning, which, when you think about it, that's the harder lightning data to get nowadays. So if someone has radar scope, that takes care of the cloud to ground part, and then the satellite data will obviously be free. That would show you what's going on in the cloud, but I don't know how long it's going to take before that's operational. The last I saw was that it's not even being tested yet, so I'm a little bit worried that it's not an initial product offering when it goes operational, but we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be neat to see what evolves with it. I'm curious. It'll be a useful nowcasting tool.
So let's move on here to another tweet. Enough lightning for today. So this tweet comes from a brand new Twitter account as of Monday, this week, Monday. It's Chasing with Echo, and the name of the Twitter is Echo. That is Jake DeFlitch, who's a friend of ours. His dog tweets. Not sure how the paws work the keyboard or the phone, but the dog tweets, and this tweet said, "Saw tornadoes today, but none of that matters because Weather DeFlitch is holding treats above the camera to keep my attention, and it's working." And attached is a picture of Echo the dog in front of a supercell thunderstorm in Nebraska. It's a very funny account. And Echo, the non-Twitter Echo, is an awesome dog. I had the pleasure of hanging out with Echo for a few days in Colorado, and Echo is awesome. So shout out to Chasing with Echo. Follow them on Twitter if you want fluffy dogs and storms. That's pretty much all you need, right? Noah, you saw Echo this week.
I mean, Echo's adorable. Echo's just soft and always down to chase. I mean, what more could you ask for in a friend?
Echo's on Twitter, but not Instagram.
Oh, here we go.
What about Snapchat?
I think that might be too much. Might be too much for the paws.
You can only do so much with 4 paws, so.
The millennials are all on Instagram.
Well, you can take that up with Echo or Jake.
Okay.
Noah, you want to introduce our next tweet here?
Yeah, so this tweet is from Rob Hart. He's a meteorologist at the National Weather Service Corpus Christi forecast office. And lots of Mets would be surprised at how much the workload increases at a coastal NWS office when there's even a minor tropical disturbance out there. And I found this tweet pretty interesting because, I mean, you really don't think about it. Not only me, because I don't work at a forecast office, but right around this time, I believe June 1st is the official start of tropical cyclone season. It seems like there are always tropical waves and stuff that bears watching out in the ocean. So you really have to keep an eye on these tropical disturbances, and especially since you never really know if they can or will impact any coastal communities, let alone your forecast area. So I just found that interesting because I think there is a tropical disturbance right now in the somewhere in Central America, Eastern Pacific somewhere.
Yeah, I'm looking at the National Hurricane Center right now, and there was a less than 40% chance of 10% chance of cyclone formation in a tropical wave a couple hundred miles southwest of Cabo Verde. So yeah, even something as small as that starts to put the workload. I guess it's good if it starts small and then, it gives people some time to get their tropical chops back.
Well, even if you're not talking about like a direct hit or impact from a tropical storm or a hurricane, I mean, these
Yeah.
systems can still bring copious amounts of rain. So flash flooding is obviously an issue. So a lot of different hazards there.
That brings up an interesting topic about when something is like named and even because sometimes a tropical system isn't named yet, and it's still doing a lot of damage, or it's not a hurricane and it's still doing a lot because some people don't take it as seriously if it doesn't have a name or if it's not a hurricane. That happened last year, or was it? I think it was last year in Louisiana. They had all that rain and all that flooding in southern Louisiana. Was that last year, Noah?
Yeah, I think it was last year. It was May maybe, or June.
Yeah.
But I didn't like Lafayette, Louisiana, just get, I want to say 20 inches upwards of that, almost 2 feet of
Yeah,
rain,
that was
something
terrible.
crazy like that. So
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah, so keep an eye. Some advice I would have. I guess it doesn't really impact me in Colorado, but keep an eye on tropical stuff if you live on the coast. Pretty much, no matter if it's named or not named or whatever. If there's a storm out there, got to keep an eye on it. So we'll go on here to I think our final tweet. This one is a surprise tweet. Tyler doesn't know I'm about to bring this one up. But he tweeted it himself, Tyler Jankowski. He tweeted, 1 decade ago this summer, I was selling programs. This August, I will announce my first New England championship in honor. Tyler, and he attached a photo of him selling programs, which is just an iconic photo.
Ooh.
Of a much younger, in braces, I think.
There are braces on there.
Tyler. Yeah, so
so happy.
That's really awesome, Tyler. So tell me about this. You're going to be announcing the New England Championship this year. That's big, huh?
Yeah, so normally the championships are reserved for the chief announcer, and it turns out Garrett Argianis, who's coming on the podcast next week, was the chief announcer for many years, but he has some of the big assignments now at the World Series. So
wow,
it's sort of a passing of the torch in that I now get the biggest game in Bristol since he has bigger prizes a little bit farther down the road.
Wow, yeah.
So Garrett will be doing a lot of the official scorekeeping, and this will be my first championship assignment. I think I did a Mid-Atlantic one, but given that we're in Bristol, especially if a Connecticut team makes it, you could get a crowd of 6,000 or 7,000. So
yeah,
along with my meteorological duties, I will have the honor of doing some public address work. So if you happen to turn on ESPN in early August when New England or Mid-Atlantic Little League game is on, if you listen carefully, this is what I do personally. If you listen carefully, you can hear the public address announcer in the background, and you'll hear me.
I'll be watching. Yeah, that's awesome. How did you get started with that, Tyler?
Well, I live a mile. I used to live a mile up the road, and it was always a big event, and I saw kids volunteering, and I wanted to sell soda and popcorn and programs and whatever, and it's morphed into game operations and just a lot of an intersection of technology and broadcasting and meteorology. So it's sort of perfect for me, and it is all volunteers. So that's my thing that I cherish in terms of giving back to the community. And even though I'm away from there now in the off season, I've been designing websites and stuff for various purposes and streamlining things. There's a lot you can do remotely online and with technology. So you can volunteer in different ways. That's what it's become. And this will be summer number 14. And that's sort of, I don't know, I stick to that number. I've never done anything longer except for live. Jobs have not lasted 14 years for me and stuff like that. School certainly hasn't, not in any one place. So
yeah,
I do cherish it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear.
I do want to announce at the World Series one day. We'll have to be patient.
Another 14 years, maybe.
Well, things do move slowly, so
yeah. So yeah, let's get into the bulk of the show here, and that's talking with Noah about our chase trip, which was just on Monday of this week. So Noah, you've been on a show before, so we won't do the normal. Actually, give us a 30-second overview of you and your life and what you do and why meteorology. Why do you like meteorology?
So yeah, I'm Noah. I'm Noah Brauer. So right now I work for Meteostar, which is a weather software company. We provide weather software to a lot of aviation clients, Air Force, hydrology customers, basically just a wide spectrum of people in the field. And in August, I will be moving to Norman, Oklahoma, and I will be starting my master's in meteorology at the University of Oklahoma.
Yay!
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. And yeah, I'm just excited to get back into research and really see what's out there in the field. So yeah, that's a brief rundown of my life.
So I'll give a quick recap of our chase trip. So Noah's down south of Denver. I'm in Loveland, Colorado, which is north of there. We met up in Loveland and in bottled beer at 7 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah,
that was something because we had a batch of beer brewing ready to be bottled and we hadn't gotten to it yet. And we decided if we're gonna take the day, we might as well make something of the morning.
The Colorado lifestyle.
So that's one way to start the morning. Bottled beer. Haven't tasted it yet, so hopefully it's good. And then I guess around 11, we headed up to Cheyenne, Wyoming. It's really in southern Wyoming. It's kind of our spot to hang out. And that's where we met up with a ton of people. We met up with Jeff Frame. That's where we met up with Jake DeFlitch, his dog. We actually saw the Dow it was OU, right? No, I think.
Yeah, it was the OU Dow. I forgot what the truck is called. It has a name. I'm not sure.
The Dow is, by the way, a Doppler on wheels, a Doppler radar on wheels, doing research out there. Man, we saw that truck a whole bunch of times on the.
We probably saw him about 4 times, different points in the chase. So.
Yeah. And so that's where I met up with Jake. And actually, Jake just joined the call because I was hoping he could join in tonight. Can you hear us, Jake?
Yeah, can you hear me, Dakota?
Yeah, we're just talking about the chase trip right now. And I guess we waited in Cheyenne for
probably about 3 hours, I'd say.
Yeah, 3? Something like that.
Yeah, two and a half, 3 hours. Yeah.
And then a few storms were firing north in Wyoming, and so it's a tough call to figure out where you're going to go at initiation.
Yeah, it was really one of those days where I think there were some discrete storms that it had pretty consistently actually in northeastern Colorado, kind of initiating right along the I-25 corridor and then moving northeast, but it showed them kind of fizzling out after a couple of hours. Whereas the storms in Wyoming, they kind of kept going, but they grew upscale and linear pretty quickly. So we were kind of worried about that. But of course, the northeastern Colorado storms, they did materialize and maintain themselves.
Yeah, so storms started firing off the Rockies, and so we decided to drive south to get in a little bit of a position, south and a little bit east. And after that, there were 2 supercells actually that started in the I guess near Loveland and south of Loveland, Fort Collins area, and those cells we basically followed the entire way up into Nebraska. They looked good in Colorado, and then they looked even better in Nebraska, and it was just really amazing. I actually don't know the official number of tornadoes that went down, but it had to be close to 10, I think, from that cell. So
yeah, they were
really an amazing trip.
Yeah, I just heard today from my coworker actually that the Carpenter, Wyoming tornado is rated as EF1. So he said that it did do some structural damage and it knocked down some power lines. So
wow,
not good to hear that, but
yeah,
it's intense.
And we saw 3 of the however many there were.
Yeah,
at least you and I know.
Yeah, we saw a few kind of touchdown, and we saw probably I'd say about 4 separate tornadoes from 2 different supercells.
Yeah.
3 of which were in Nebraska. So it was an eventful day.
And to me, the structure of that storm was, to me, it was more amazing than the tornadoes. Probably because we weren't that close to the tornadoes. I mean, we got a nice view, but it wasn't like an amazing view or anything. But the structure was just drop dead gorgeous. Oh my gosh! I mean,
I was gonna say that's probably the most amazing structure I've ever seen. Next to Ray, Colorado, last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that was on par with that. It was so clear, and because the air is so, well, I don't want to say so dry, but relatively dry out here as compared to, say, Missouri, you could just see the storm so clearly.
And what I think was, go ahead, Dakota.
No, I was just gonna hand it off to you, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna just touch on. It was neat to have the 3 mesos with the storm too. I mean, that's something you don't see too often. And I mean, depending on your point of view, which I think most were on the first meso, and then the 2 couplets kind of formed to the west side of it. It was kind of neat just to see all 3 mesos at once, and actually one of them producing a tornado too at the time. So yeah, I agree. That was ranking up there with some of the better structure yet.
I mean, that screenshot of the radar at that point. There's 3 couplets.
Yes.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, there were a few pictures of people who snapped 2. I don't know if they were on the ground, but snapped 2 funnels that were going on at the same time. I think Matt Mahalik had one of those pictures. Just incredible. That's kind of like not even, it's not even close to the Dodge City day, but that day there were a bunch of mesos that people saw that were putting down tornadoes at different times.
Yeah.
And so, Jake, we actually talked about your dog for quite a while.
Oh yeah.
How was Echo on that journey?
And she liked that journey better than the North Dakota journey on Friday. Actually, got a little bit more riled up on the North Dakota one. But it's hard. I mean, I think she enjoys it now. I mean, she knows she can meet other people, and now she's going to be being promised treats in the future too. So I think she's all in. She's more interested in storm chasing than I am at this point. And I also think that people, Dakota and Noah, are more interested in seeing Echo at this point than myself. But I'll let that one pass for now. So thank you for bringing me on the show.
That's only half true, Jake.
Okay, 60-40.
Yeah, there you go.
Does she get treats like when you see something awesome? I feel like that should be a thing.
That's true. I haven't done that yet. That I have to. Well, actually, she usually just gets treats once in a while in general. But I should actually treat her if we see something legit. Then she'll start to be more interested than she is now. So
yeah, maybe like half a treat for Scud, and then another treat for Funnel, and then
I can do that. Yeah,
Tornado three treats. So.
Yeah, when I try to get her to take her photos and get her to sit down in front of things, she usually doesn't follow along too well because she's tired of being in the car and she just wants to sniff everything. So that can be a little bit of a pain. But other than that, she cooperates pretty well. So.
I can't believe you can get those photos of her sitting down when mid-chase, when you're trying to get back in the car and drive to the storm, and it's really impressive.
I mean, I've tried to train her well, although sitting is still a new thing. So I actually have to promise her, like you said, treats. I hold a treat right above the phone camera, so she actually looks at the phone camera and tells her to sit down. So there's ways around it, but it's not the easiest thing.
That's funny. So Jake, how far into Nebraska did you go? Noah and I stopped in Bridgeport.
It wasn't much farther. I think it was probably I took a dirt road north of, I can't remember, the South Alliance was a north-south road that's dirt. And I pretty much took it mainly just to grab a time lapse possibly, because you sent me a photo, or I saw a photo of the structure from Bridgeport, and I was like, that's a nice structure. So I think I went about 30 minutes north of a town just east of Bridgeport and stayed there for another 30 minutes or so. But it was pretty much the show was done. It was more just capturing some lightning or some other images.
Gotcha. Nice. And so you'd say probably when there were those 3 couplets, that was probably your favorite or most intense part of the day?
Yeah. Well, it's also like it's a struggle with the road network, because I remember the first one I think it was near Grover, Colorado, and we were in the midst of pretty much the rain core and getting close to the hail core when we were on that dirt road, and it was pretty much just trying to stay ahead of that.
Yeah.
And because we knew it was pretty much going to continue moving into a better environment. But that was pretty intense, just trying to stay along that and then get on 80 and shoot off east to be ahead of it. But
Yeah, we were together most of the time until the end. I guess we kind of split up.
Yeah.
Well, you were closer to the tornado than we were after we split up.
Yeah,
Which
I
was
can't
kinda
remember
cool.
where I think I just stopped on a dirt road and shot up north for a bit just to
Yeah.
try to get.
Yeah, you stayed in Bushnell, I think. We
Oh,
went
okay.
to
Yeah, then I think it
Kimball.
was just north of Bushnell and whatnot, but yeah.
Yeah.
The positive strike lightning with that storm was just incredible. I mean, there must have been cloud to ground strikes, I don't know, I want to say 20, 25 miles away from the core, which is just amazing.
Yeah. That was terrible. I hated that.
Yeah, that was one of the more intense lightning storms I've seen. Excuse me, within a supercell, and I mean, and chasing. I mean, there wasn't. I mean, I didn't really have a problem with chasers that day chasing, mainly because it was a larger area and because I think there was less outs. But the number that were out still seemed to go ahead, get out of their car and maybe walk, a short distance to take a photo. And I mean, there's a couple CGs going around, and you just get concerned. I usually enjoy photographing lightning, but you can't really predict where that's going to happen. So that was something I saw.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like at one point we were under Mamatis and there was still lightning coming down. Normally Mamatis is pretty far away from the center of the thunderstorm. That I was, to be honest, I was stressed out the whole time because of that lightning. Even though I was in the car the whole time and I knew it would be fine, I don't know. It just still kind of freaks me out. So let's see here. So we saw a few tornadoes in Colorado, then Nebraska, and then what was the fate of that cell? Did it end up kind of shelving out and becoming a complex?
I mean, when I stayed with it, I pretty much, I think, was just on the southern edge of some complex until it died off. You guys said near Bridgeport, I mean, it was really starting to become outflow dominance, and at that point, it was more just a wind threat and still continuing to be a lightning threat and some hail. But I'm pretty sure, it might have stayed somewhat isolated on the southern edge of all the convection, but I'm pretty sure, I guess it then died off at that point. But I remember going back and seeing some radar loops of it lasting, that 7-8 hour stretch from northeast Colorado starting in Lake Loveland, where we could have just, grabbed some lunch at before we started chasing instead of going to Cheyenne, and then just continue northeast to the Nebraska Panhandle. Yeah,
so how many, did you say how many miles that it went? It was incredible, right? Like,
this distance, I'm not sure how far exactly. All I knew was it was about an 8 hour stretch. So I guess I could see from Loveland to you at least went to Alliance, Nebraska, whatever that stretch is. But I mean, at least a couple hundred miles, probably, 200, 300 miles, depending on how far in Nebraska it went to.
That's incredible. And so the Storm Prediction Center was in charge of giving the outlooks for this day. And they ended up doing a moderate risk, which is the second highest storm risk. And that was actually for hail and for tornadoes. And I saw somewhere that it was like the furthest west moderate risk ever. I don't know if that's necessarily true or not, but regardless, it still says something that there's a moderate risk in Wyoming, because that's not something that happens. It's not like Oklahoma or anything, or Kansas or anything, where that happens a couple times a year, more than a couple times a year. I guess, Noah, could you want to talk about the setup and why we got that moderate risk?
Yeah, so we kind of had obviously all the ingredients were in place for tornadoes, just higher end severe weather in general. Of course, you can't really say, of course, there's going to be tornadoes today. Tornado is more of a probabilistic thing. You can't really say there's going to be a tornado here. It's more like there's this percentage, this likelihood of a tornado within this area. But anyways, we had upslope, and when you tie an upslope with, or say, an easterly component, you're automatically kind of bringing moisture advection in. There's moisture advection ongoing. So you have moisture, and then you have a source for lift. And at the same time, we had a wave kind of moving in from the west. So that was more of the large scale forcing for ascent. And that was actually a concern in the forecast, where things going to grow upscale rather quickly because of that wave, which they didn't really seem to do. So we had our moisture, we had our lift, and obviously we had our instability with steep lapse rates aloft. And dew points were in the low 60s across northeastern Colorado that morning. Dakota, I remember we were walking out in King Supers in Loveland getting snacks for our trip, and it felt like something out of South Texas that day. It was just, I mean, people in South Texas are probably laughing at 61-degree dew points sounding humid, but I mean, it really did feel humid.
Yeah, it did. So their forecast ended up, I think, being pretty good. I don't have that great of a gauge on like when a forecast busts or when it's pretty good. I don't know. Maybe one you, Jake or Noah, could comment on how the forecast did that day, not just where we were, but also up into other parts of Wyoming.
I mean, from what I saw, it did fairly well. I need to start going back and actually checking more and seeing how the forecast, went, and actually seeing the ratings of the tornadoes. I sometimes don't go back and check that. I wish I did more. But I mean, correlating the reports with, see some tweets of correlating the reports with the outlooks that happened, at each time frame during the day. It seemed like they had a pretty good handle of what was happening in a good geographic area that it was located. And I think the local offices, I think NWS Cheyenne did very well with their work too. Considering it's an oddity or a rare event for that area, I think the warnings. I mean, every storm that was necessary to be warned was warned. The discussions leading up to the event pretty much handled it pretty well. And I think, like Noah highlighted, the biggest concern I had was an upscale fairly quickly and it being messy, especially when you have that much instability against the Rockies and topographic effects. I'm new to Colorado, so I'm not as familiar with it, but I would think that's somewhat rare to have that much instability right along the foothills to see then how much that would affect the storm mode itself. But
yeah, I think it was like in the top like 90th percentile for convective available potential energy for that day, which is unbelievable.
Just something I want to note here. Just when you see dew points in the upper 50s, low 60s in Denver, I've noticed that it's actually really hard to get severe weather unless there's some larger scale wave coming in, because usually in order to get really that rich of moisture here in Denver, we kind of need a pretty strong cap. So on kind of the contrary, we need something to break that cap or lift air to their LFC. So I mean, that wave definitely helped with that, but I guess the upslope was also strong enough. But I've noticed we tend to see gloomy, cloudy days, and not so much severe weather when the dew points are that high here. But that's just kind of my observation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm looking at the storm reports here from the Storm Prediction Center, and there were 34 tornado reports. That doesn't mean there were 34 tornadoes. Some of the reports are the same tornado, so it was definitely less than 34 tornadoes. 105 wind reports. That actually most of those were in Michigan that day, and then 118 hail reports. Most of those were in the northern central plains. All of the tornado reports were either in northern Colorado, Wyoming, western Nebraska, or there was one in South Dakota. I guess if you just look at it like that, it was a pretty good forecast. Jake, you brought up a good point about the local offices. The Cheyenne office, National Weather Service office, was very. They were paying attention to a lot of the details of the storm 3 days before the event, probably even further than that. But I only started reading them 3 days before. They were talking about it the day of. It was like the headline and the forecast discussion. They were communicating with the Storm Prediction Center to put out that severe thunderstorm or severe tornado watch. But one thing that was kind of weird, and I don't really like talking about it that much, but I don't know. I feel like it has to be said, is that the Boulder office in Colorado really was not talking about the event at all, even though the kind of the beginning portions of it, which were still included severe weather and tornadoes, they really weren't talking about it as much as I don't know, maybe thought they should have been, or not nearly as much as Cheyenne. Part of that might be because Cheyenne's population center is Cheyenne, and that's like in southern Wyoming. So the event was affecting their big population center, whereas for Boulder, Denver, and Boulder, they're big population centers. Even though, there were some severe reports just outside of Loveland and Fort Collins, and those aren't, really, they're not small population areas. They're a lot of people living there. I don't know. Does anyone want to comment on that? The discrepancy between two forecast offices there?
I mean, I guess I would have liked to have seen more collaboration between the forecast offices, because I don't know. This is just me personally. I don't know. When I'm trying to forecast for here, it always helps to kind of look and see what other people are thinking too, just to gain some perspective, just other input. And I mean, models were hinting at severe weather here over northeastern Colorado for quite some time. So I guess I was a little bit disappointed just not even to see the mention of thunderstorms, let alone severe weather in the forecast.
Yeah, they had a 20% chance of storms in their forecast 12 hours before, with no mention of severe. In, I guess it was like in Fort Collins and Loveland, definitely. I don't think they had any chance, but up in the Northern Plains, that's what they had, which, the 12 hours later, there were several supercells, long track supercells going through.
Yeah,
seems kind of weird.
Yeah, I also wonder how the TV stations, because I don't have cable, so I don't watch the local TV stations also forecast here, but how much they are forecasting it. And also, I'm not aware. I've heard rumors on Twitter. Is it true that I know Denver, the TV stations do cover portions of eastern Colorado? I've seen tweets where like they won't, however, go live if there's a tornado on the ground or tornado warning in those more rural places of eastern Colorado. Although people do live there, I've heard that they don't go live on their broadcast. Is there any truth to that? Because that's what I've seen a couple rumors on Twitter from.
Well, perhaps I can chime in. Well, hello, Jake. You're a
Hey,
cord
Tyler.
cutter.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's neat to have you join halfway through, especially when I didn't know.
Surprise.
So you're a cord cutter. Aside, do you subscribe to any TV service? Because I don't have cable either.
No, I mean I do. I mean I'll really watch it through my online app. I mean, really on my laptop is when I'll watch any cable or whatnot. And I'll touch on local TV stations once in a while. It's not regularly though. And
well, PlayStation View is tremendous if you ever need a cheap streaming service that's legal. That's legal.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah.
Hold on. Let me try to see if I can find a map. So you were questioning whether or not the Denver stations cover where?
Well, I've heard that they cover portions of northeast Colorado. Yeah, I guess finding the map would be helpful, but I guess really more the rural sections of northeast Colorado. I'm not sure what the towns are out there. I think like Grover was where the tornado touched down. I'm not sure what the counties are names. But really over in that direction.
Yeah, it'd be Weld County, basically. That's pretty much it. Weld County. It's a giant county. But while Tyler's looking that up real quick, I wanted to mention that the TV stations did a really good job of covering the forecast for the event. I wasn't watching them when they were actually going on, but they were paying attention to the Storm Prediction Center for the most part, and I saw a lot of graphics with the Storm Prediction Center risk. So I feel like it wasn't a huge deal with the National Weather Service office, just because the local stations media were already covering the event.
Yeah, well, I'm looking and I'm also processing what you're saying. What do you think the main way is people are getting this severe weather information? Now, I did see your tweet. You showed the National Digital Forecast Database that didn't have the red shading. That's what you're talking about?
That didn't even have the red shading. It had like low chance for storms that day.
Did you see what the AFD said?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't like...
Huh. Well,
it barely mentioned it, if I'm going to be honest.
Do you think people go to point-and-click forecasts on the Weather Service?
Yeah, sure. Some people do, for sure.
I feel like some people, like some weather nerds, definitely go to point-click forecast or even read the forecast discussion. I would say the majority of people probably look at weather.com or AccuWeather or just from their local news. But that's maybe our friend Min could join in on that sometime.
Yeah,
But
wait. So Tyler, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, probably not too many people go to the click point forecast, but the meteorologists are going to those forecasts.
Yeah, well, you'd be screwed if you were just basing your forecast on that.
Right, you're not just basing it on that, but you
Well-
could incur some sort of bias if you look at that forecast and say,
yeah, and certainly there's a spectrum out there on TV. You have people that don't know what they're doing, and you have people that do everything on their own. So,
Well, it's also emergency managers are big into working directly with NWS more than many
bingo.
some other outlets. So
that's a good point. They might be most impacted.
And that probably is the case. Now, I'm not sure what the case was here, if there was any events, like you said, Loveland, Fort Collins, if they're actually saying over the phone if there was this chance or if it's, how it works. But probably EMs are a big play into this, too, with looking at the forecast from NWS.
So I've pulled up a crusty map here from 2005, 2006, and it says that it doesn't have state borders, and I'm not familiar with the Wild West, so bear with me. But there's a Denver TV market, and then there's the Cheyenne-Scotts Bluff. So, and then there's a Rapid City, looks like Rapid City, but the Cheyenne-Scotts Bluff is it's like a cutout within Denver that's a separate market. So that would make sense that they don't cover those counties.
Yes. I just wonder, again, I was looking on Twitter, I wasn't looking at, live streams or if not, if there was actually any live streams that were going on that day, just because the tornado was almost in a, population center where it's much less than, closer to the foothills.
Yeah, well, usually the lesser population areas have trouble getting even coverage.
Yes.
That's interesting. Huh.
I mean, so not where I am, but I could see a situation if you're in an area that, if you have a county that has 50 people in it, and Denver is your center, it's challenging.
Yeah.
Sure. Jump in and cut in on anything that's happening.
Cut in on the golf tournament. So Jake, I wanted to shift the topic for a second here. It's still chasing. You went chasing, gosh, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe just a week ago, in southern Colorado / northern Texas. And you were on this storm that just had phenomenal structure. And the crazy thing about it is you were like one of the, I think there were only like 2 people on that storm, and you were one of them, and a dog, I guess, was on that storm too. Tell me about that trip, because I was amazed by the lack of chasers and the structure of the storm all at the same time.
Yeah, so I started off the day before in Northeast Colorado, and so I ended up in Burlington that night, and the same money I sleep in my car in hotel parking lots or Walmart parking lots. And I remember texting you, I was unsure if I was going to go down south or not. I was also unsure if I was going to go down to Oklahoma, because that was the day in Oklahoma where everyone was obsessed because there was an absurd amount of instability along the dry line, which is understandable. I mean, whenever you're trying to pull off, 10,000 joules, a cape or whatever, from soundings and from models. But I decided more to stay to the marginal play. SPC put a marginal out that morning, and and then they put up actually a slate, I think by midday or early afternoon, and I was already jumping on that. I think I left Burlington like 10 a.m. or whatever to drive south or blast south. Excuse me. So I went down there, and like you said, it was pretty. There wasn't many around, and there was a couple storms that went up at once, so I was concerned messy storm mode, and I went back and forth between a tornado warned storm to the one that was a little more discreet to the south, and then I dropped down to the southern one. I really stayed with that probably for about 3 hours, and that's what gave me, the gorgeous structure, probably the best structure. I don't want to say I've ever seen chase. I mean, I've only been chasing for 5-6 years, but it ranks up there. Yeah. And then I followed that probably all the way into the Texas Panhandle for the evening. So yeah, it was one of the better chases. Again, mainly because there was so little, little people, actually little chasers on the storm to deal with them on the roads, and more or less just to deal, with other people taking photos of the storm. It just seems, I feel like more legit probably if there's only a couple on the storm than there is 100 chasers or so.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. And then Capital Weather Gang wrote an article about it.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, yeah, it's just, and the storm motion was nice too. I was able to stay ahead with road network, so you're able to get a couple different time lapses of the storm, during the day and then as the sun sets. And I mean, it's pretty much as you can ask from a chase. I don't always need tornadoes. Any structure that, really can show your, what you learn from meteorology from school and how you can, place that into real life setting and, pretty much just enjoying what, as a storm structure, summed it up for me. So it was definitely one of my better chases. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to hear that story because you had kind of told me the story, but I don't know. I love it. So, anything else that we missed, guys, about the Monday trip?
I mean, it was just an eventful day. The thing I really enjoy about chasing is not only like getting out there and kind of seeing the weather up close, hopefully not too close, but it's just kind of nice to put everything aside for a little while. And we talked about this a little bit, Dakota. It's just kind of nice to like be in the weather for the time being. I don't know.
It's your only focus for a few hours.
It
that
is.
Day.
I enjoy that, and I'm usually only focused about the weather for the most part. But.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, it's also nice to meet others you work with on Twitter. I mean, we met up with Jeff Frame, and then some of the students, Billy Folletti, I think, in Illinois. So it was nice to meet, just put a face to a name in that case.
Exactly.
And then just meet other chasers that you see, and discuss with on Weather Twitter and Twitter itself. Sorry, I don't mean Weather Twitter, Dakota. I just mean Twitter itself. But just also and discuss weather with them. So.
Yeah. No, all around it was a great day, and it was also it went through a pretty unpopulated area, which is probably the most important thing, honestly, at the end of the day.
I would have to agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No injuries from what I've heard. So luckily.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just pulled up the actual ratings. I just went to the Cheyenne's NWS page, and it looks like they haven't done yet. Again, it was hard because I think there was multiple tornadoes on that one supercell at once. But I guess the one that almost went through Alliance, which is while the sun was setting, was rated an EF2 with the width of 500 miles and the path length of 39 miles. And then they also, I think, did and then they're waiting to do, I guess, the Bushnell one they haven't done yet, which is the one I think we all saw with the 3 mesos itself. But they at least have a nice, layout here, just, discussing the strength of the tornadoes and also just a summary of the tornado itself too.
Yeah, that's a cool link, actually. They did a really good job with that.
Yeah, no, I think the whole storm, they did a good job again because it's also difficult because they don't really see a 15% hatch sig day often. So
yeah. Huh. Well, we're coming up on the hour mark here, so we should probably wrap it up. Thanks, Jake and Noah, for joining us, taking us down the chase road and what happened on Monday. Really appreciate you guys joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So just a few plugs here. If you don't follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at the WX Junkies. We're also on Facebook, and you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, pretty much any podcast platform. If you're listening right now, go ahead and give it a rating or review, please. We'd really appreciate it and love to hear from you. Tyler, we have the next few weeks booked up here. Who's going to be on the show?
Next week, we're finally excited to have Garrett Argianis on the show. I know we've been delayed a bit in that regard due to a few scheduling challenges, but we'll have him next Thursday at the familiar 8 p.m. start time. And then beyond that week, we have a lineup that goes into July already on, let's see here. Do we have anyone on the 29th?
No, I think that's the only day that's not booked.
So the 29th we will have booked, and then going into July we have Ali Kieslick from the National Weather Service, and on the 13th of July we have Steve Fandero on the show. So a number of guests lined up here over the next couple of weeks as we go into midsummer. Excited about that, and we'll certainly let you know when we have some more penciled in. But that does it for this week's edition of the Weather Junkies. On behalf of Noah Brauer, Jake DeFlitch, Dakota Smith, and myself, thank you so much for listening to this episode and We hope you'll join us right back here next week.
Cow. I gotta go, Julia. We got cows.